Hey gang, Sally here. Hope you're having an amazing and fascinating day. I know I am. I am currently in real time in Mississippi, and it's been interesting. I've seen a couple of different videos from other YouTubers talking about tires and tire related issues lately, and I'd had this on my mind anyway because I've been going through changing temperatures, and I wanted to talk to you guys about tires because hey, I haven't done that for about a year. So we're going to get right into that. But before we do, as always, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you all supporting my channel in the way that you do. And even if that's nothing more than watching the videos, that's definitely support. Thumbs up, comments, that's all great. If you want to go further, every video description has a list of links for things that I believe in. So I don't ever promote anything that I don't actually believe in. And in some cases, I get something back if you use my link to purchase or subscribe to something. That's not true in all cases. I have an Amazon affiliate link, and on my Amazon storefront page, I include things that I definitely like. But if you use my Amazon link to purchase anything, I actually get a small commission from Amazon, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. So for those of you that are willing to do that, I super appreciate it because every little bit counts since I'm not really making money. I'm just, eating my savings up at this point. So there's that. All right, we're going to roll the intro and we're going to talk trash about tires and facts. Be right back. Welcome back. Okay, so we're going to talk first about inflation, underinflation, overinflation, uh, what happens when those conditions exist, and why it's so important to make sure that your tires are properly inflated all the time. And what does proper inflation mean? So let's start with when's the right time to check your tire pressure? And I'm going to talk about my tires. I'm going to talk about a lot of the factual information I'm going to talk about comes directly from Michelin, who is the manufacturer of the tires that I use. I use the Aglis Cross Climate Mud and Snow tires. This is the second RV that I've had them on, and I've been very happy with the tires overall. So I'm going to talk some facts, and I'm also going to tell you what it is that I actually do, which may or may not be what the manufacturers recommend. If you don't have Michelin tires, if you have some other brand of tires, go to your manufacturer's website. They will have all kinds of tire information there so you can make sure you're doing it right for your particular tires. And I'm going to say it's not hard to do, but it's stuff that's important to know, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So, inflation. First of all, when should you inflate your tire, or when should you check your tire pressure? Early in the morning before it's had a chance to warm up. Mm-hmm. And according to Michelin's website, no more than 2 hours, sorry, no sooner than 2 hours after the vehicle's been driven, and no more than 2 miles after it's been driven. So those are the absolute parameters. But I'm here to tell you, based on my experience, tires heat up really quickly. And I know this because I run a TPMS. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So I'm always monitoring my tire pressure and tire inflation. But if you check your tires first thing in the morning when they are cold, and cold's important because that's what all the recommendations about inflation values are based on. So you want to make sure that your tires are cold, and if they aren't, then you need to make an adjustment to compensate for the heat in the tires. Now, I just looked, and for my tires, Michelin recommends that if you're not checking them cold and you need to add pressure, then you add an additional 4.35 psi over the recommended cold pressure. And in order to avoid having to check them when they're warm, to have to go to a gas station or something like that, or to be able to do something about it once you have checked them, first of all, make sure you have a tire inflation gauge so that you can measure your PSI, which stands for pounds per square inch, for those of you that don't know. And how do you know what, let's go right there too. How do you know what pressure you're supposed to be running? Well, every vehicle will have a sticker, every drivable vehicle will have a sticker on the pillar inside the door frame of the driver's side door. And that sticker will tell you what the recommended tire inflation is, depending on the vehicle and depending on what its parameters are. So, for example, I have had pickup trucks where I would have a recommended pressure for light load and for heavy load. So, two different recommended pressures. In the case of my RV, it's straight across the board, but I have two different pressures for front axle and rear axle. So in my particular case, my manufacturer recommends, and double check this, guys, make sure that you're doing what the manufacturer recommends, 75 psi for the front and 80 psi for the rear. And I have dualies on the rear. So there's, I mean, like for the Michelins, I have a Michelin handbook that includes a tire inflation chart that shows you exactly what weight each of those tires can carry at each inflation level, which is very, very handy. And it makes a difference what that weight is based on whether you have single wheels or dual wheels on the axle. I have duals on my rear. So let's get back to inflation. And I don't mean to make this complicated, but I want to make it super informative. So driving on underinflated tires is really dangerous. And the thing that most people point to first is that it can cost you money. If your tires are underinflated, it will increase the wear. So let's say if you're driving at a 20%, and this is according to Michelin, if you're driving 20% underinflated PSI, then if your tire, for example, is rated for 25,000 miles, you'll lose about 5,000 miles worth of wear. You'll lose about 20%. I care less about wear than I do about safety. And in fact, for that reason, I don't bother rotating my tires. I would get more wear out of my tires if I rotated them, but it's really hard to rotate duals effectively. And so I don't bother doing it. I just accept the fact that I will get less wear out of my tires, and I'm fine with that. Because for non-rotation, my experience has been, and what I'd seen previously, is about 10% loss of tread life. I don't really care. I want to make sure that things run as smoothly as possible. But to me, inflation is super, super important. And my rule is that I won't drive on tires that are more than 10% underinflated. And in fact, I've never even actually been that low and driven on them. But I'll give you an example. When I look at my tires this morning, I haven't done it yet, but I can pretty well predict what it's going to be because the temperature this morning is 15 degrees colder than it was yesterday morning. And that means that for every, I think about every 10 degrees of temperature loss, you lose 1 to 2 psi automatically. So my expectation is that my fronts, which should be at 75, will probably be at about 70. Now, 10% of 75 psi would be 7.5 psi, which means for me, as long as my tires are above like 68 psi, I'm going to go ahead and run them. And I'll do that for a couple of reasons. One is I don't run at high speeds. The fastest I ever go is 65, and I usually don't go that fast. The other is that tires do heat up as you drive. And especially if I'm driving slowly for the first few miles and they're heating up slowly, I'm less concerned about less than 10% underinflation. I think the lowest I've ever had my fronts that I've actually run them has been 70 instead of 70 psi, so less than 10%. And on the rears, my rears are supposed to be at 80 psi. So again, 8 off of 80 would be, 72 psi would be fine. The lowest I've run them has been about 75. And I do that because I'm changing climates so frequently that if I increase my pressure today and I know it's going to be warmer where I'm going to be tomorrow, then I'm going to be letting air out of my tires. And if I were being an absolute stickler about it, that's exactly what I would do. But I'm pretty lazy, so I'm not going to do that. Now, if I knew I was going to be staying in an area that's going to be cold for some length of time, then I would adjust my pressure for the length of time that I'm here. And if I have to adjust it again a couple of weeks down the road, that's fine. And that makes sense to do that. But for one day, I'm not going to do it. I'm lazy. And that's what I know to be the case today. I know that when I leave my destination from today, which is only 15 minutes from where I am, in a couple of days it's going to be significantly warmer. So I probably will not have to make an adjustment at that point. But at that point, if I do, I will. Underinflation does a few things. One is that it increases your likelihood of a blowout. It also changes the wear pattern on the tires. So, who wants a blowout in an RV? It's a really, really bad thing. And in fact, I'm going to put a link here to a video done by some other YouTubers, Irene Iron Travels. They just had a situation recently where they had a blowout and it turned out to be a really big deal. Actually, I don't know that, and they don't know this either. Nobody knows that they actually had a blowout. They lost a wheel off of their fifth wheel trailer and no idea that it happened. And in fact, I'm not going to put the link here. I'll put the link later because I want to talk about TPMS in relation to that as well. Um, so, underinflation, bad. Overinflation is also bad. And I don't have specific numbers on that, but for the most part, the biggest issue with overinflation, as far as I'm concerned, especially in warmer temperatures, is that it causes increased heat in the tire, and increased heat in and of itself could potentially cause a blowout. And this is, by the way, this is one of the reasons that a TPMS, tire pressure monitoring system, is so important. So we talked about when to measure your tire pressure. We talked about what your tire pressure should be. But what happens when you're driving down the road and you're using a TPMS, which I highly recommend, and you see that your tire pressure has gone from 75 psi on my front up to 86 psi? Well, should you stop and let air out of it to get it back to 75 psi? No! And I'm being really clear about this because I saw a video that a prominent YouTuber did a few years back where he actually did that. He stopped and let pressure out of his tires. Bad idea. That's why on the sidewall of your tire and on the sticker on your door pillar, it says cold inflation pressure because it is going to heat up as you drive. So never let air out of your tires just because the temperature went, or just because the PSI went up. Now, when do you let pressure out of your tires? And I haven't done this because it makes me a little bit nervous, quite frankly. When I was up around Cape Cod a few months ago, you can camp on the beach there. And they actually have tire inflation stations as soon as you come off the beach so you can reinflate your tires. The recommendation, and I went in and I talked to the ranger about this because I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't willing to do it. He said, even with my heavy motorhome that is supposed to have an 80 psi inflation cold, to drive on the beach, I should deflate my tires to 11 to 13 psi. And I wouldn't do it. He said it wouldn't happen, but I just had visions of driving the tires off the bead and, having a major problem. Now, I maybe wouldn't have had a problem, but I didn't have enough guts to do that. I really would love to camp on a beach, but I'm not willing to take a chance like that, especially by myself. You know, if I was with somebody else and I had somebody who could go get help, that'd be a different story. But I'm responsible for everything that I do, so I try to be responsible for the most part in what I do. In what I do. So never let air out of your tires just because they heated up and the inflation and the pressure went up. Now, on a super, super hot day, not only is your tire pressure going to go up, but your temperature is also going to rise pretty dramatically. I've seen tire temperatures as high as like 110, 111 starts to make me nervous. And I don't know, I don't have actual numbers for when that's bad. But when they get up at that high, I'll usually pull over and just take a break for a little while, let them cool down a bit before I go on. And one of the things to really watch for, and this is yet another reason why having a tire pressure monitoring system is such a good idea, is for sudden increases in temperature. So if you've been driving along and your tire temperature has been at 85 and all of a sudden, I mean like within minutes, it's at 115, you want to get off the road pretty quickly. I'd want to get off the road pretty quickly. You do you. So that's another reason that having a tire pressure monitor system is generally a really good idea. So let's talk about speed ratings. Here's the deal, and this applies particularly most often to trailers, to towables. So speed ratings, especially on travel trailers, fifth wheels and so forth, They will often put really expensive tires on trailers because it's easy to do to get them out the door. And in California, for example, the law is that if you are towing anything, you can't drive above 55 miles an hour. Now, I see people drive faster than that all the time when they're towing. Personally, I didn't do it. I would maybe do like 68 or 58. That's about the fastest I would ever go when I was towing because I used to tow a travel trailer. And I would just, assume that it's going to take me a long time to get there. And I would do that even outside of California because, I want to be safe. And the issue is that many times the tires that come on trailers are disposable, essentially. They'll have a speed rating no greater than 55 miles an hour. And what's important about that is that if you're driving faster than 55 miles an hour, you increase your chances, if that's what they're rated for, you increase your chances of a blowout exponentially. So don't do it. Check the speed rating on your tire. All right, let's talk about how to do that. So on my Michelin tires, they use a combination of speed and load rating. Actually, that's backwards. So my load rating is 115, and then it's /112R. So at 115, that means that my load rating is a maximum. Sorry, I got a small print. Is a maximum of 2,680 pounds of load at the maximum pressure, cold pressure of 80 psi. And then the speed rating R means that I can go up to 106 miles per hour. Now, as I said previously, and that's theoretically 106 miles an hour at the maximum load rating. Hopefully I'm not at the maximum load rating. I have actually not ever weighed this rig. I'm going to do that sometime soon, and I'll bring you that process as well. But I am certainly never going to drive 106 miles an hour, especially with a fully weighted rig. That would just be crazy to me. So we've got load rating, we've got speed rating, we've got underinflation, we've got overinflation. You want to avoid exceeding speed or load ratings, or even getting really close to them. There is a margin of safety. Hi, Kit. Hey, 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 who's a crazy boy? You haven't come to talk to the people for a while. Can you say hi to the people? Can you say hi to the people? He's been sitting behind me this whole time. Um, and now I've completely lost my train of thought because he's very busy. He's very busy. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's a very, very busy boy. Isn't he cute? Isn't he just the cutest thing? And he's such a good boy. Such a good boy. Hey, if you haven't seen the movie The Help, what I've been saying to him lately is, you're kind, and you're beautiful, and you're smart. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And why do you think I'm your chew toy? I'm not your chew toy, baby boy. I'm not your chew toy. Okay, now that we're done playing with the dog, you want to avoid getting even close to your speed rating or your load rating. And keep in mind, yes, every tire manufacturer has a safety margin built in, but I have a safety margin for their safety margin. I mean, I would say I don't want to be within 20% of the speed rating ever on a fully loaded big vehicle like this. Passenger vehicle, entirely different. It's a whole different subject. Um, but I don't want to be that close. Ideally, I don't want to be really close on my load rating, but I bet I probably am. This is a really heavy rig to begin with because there's no particle board or everything in here is solid wood, which is really awesome. And it actually makes it drive better. A couple of things that I really like about the driving characteristics of this RV versus my previous one, which was on a Mercedes Sprinter chassis. This is lower in height. It's only 10 foot 1 inch high. Most small class Cs are on the order of 10.6 and up in some cases. So it's lower in height. The manufacturer curves the outer sidewalls, which makes it more aerodynamic, along with the front curved front cap. So it's more aerodynamic, so it goes through the air more efficiently, which doesn't really increase my fuel economy by much. Although actually, I don't know, maybe it does. I average about 9.25 mpg, and I've heard a number of people say that they only get like 7 or 8. So I don't know. But because of the curvature, because of the lower height, and because of the weight, I am less affected by wind, dramatically less affected by wind than I was in the Mercedes Sprinter based coach. So there's that. All right, let's talk about TPMS and why that is so important. This is the TPMS that I use, TPMS system, tire pressure monitoring system. This one is made by TST. They were originally designed for truck drivers. This is the third system I've had. I bought one for my travel trailer initially, and I sold that one. I didn't sell it. I gave it to my guys that bought the travel trailer, um, because it was set up for the travel trailer already, so it was easy to just give it to them. And then I bought one for my previous motorhome, and then they came out with this new monitor, which is a 7.7. This one is much easier to read, much easier to operate, and it connects to the sensors much more quickly. So you can see we just got one that popped up already. So what this shows is on this side, it will show you the temperature of the tire, and on this side, it will show you the pressure of the PSI of the tire. And then here, see all these little yellow ones? So we got 34 degrees and 73 PSI, and this is on my interior rear dually. I'm gonna have to put air in the tires before I leave. Well, we'll see. I mean that's less than 10%. I may just drive on it. We'll see what the others pop up at. But you can select an individual tire. So the one that's flashing is the one that's selected. This one hasn't come up on the sensors yet. Same thing. So we're going to let those all populate. Um, but what this means is this is what I use to check my tire pressure, right? I don't bother getting a gauge out and individually checking my tire pressure because this is the pressure by which I am monitoring as I drive down the road. So I turn this on before I get ready to drive in the morning. I usually turn it on one of the first things as I'm getting the interior ready to go, so it's got time for all the sensors to connect. And as long as I'm within 10%, I'm going to drive because it's going to warm up. And I'm only driving about 15 minutes, and when I leave my next destination, it's going to be much warmer than it is now, so I should be fine. That's what I'm counting on. We'll see how it works out. But I'm able to monitor the temperature of the tires, and it says the tire temperature is 34 degrees now. Well, that's the ambient temperature. It's also still 34 degrees outside. Woohoo! It's warmed up though. It was colder than that overnight. So I had tank heaters running all night and, all the stuff. And I'm plugged in, so I have my electric space heater running all night. Whole nother story. We're going to talk about how to stay warm in an RV when the temperature gets too cold soon as well. But this is how I monitor what's going on with my tires as I go down the road. And I used to have it mounted up pretty high, so it was at eye level. But the other thing that happens is an alarm will go off if it's outside of the parameters that I've set. So I don't need to be looking at it constantly because an alarm will sound. And I think this is about where I'm going to link the video from Irene Iron Travels because they use a different brand of tire pressure monitoring system. They lost their wheel and never got an alarm on their TPMS, which to me is just crazy. That's kind of like an epic fail for the TPMS. 73 across three of my four rears, and the fronts have still not. Yeah, my passenger side front is 67. Okay, here we go. So this is beeping to tell me that I've got low pressure on my outer passenger side dually. I'm only at 71 psi. Now to silence the alarm, I'm just going to press it. Now I've silenced the alarm, but I still have the issue. So I gotta get the compressor out and air up that tire. That 71 is too low. That's outside the parameters. And I have it set for no more than 10% off. So how am I going to do that? Well, funny you should ask, because I thought this subject would come up. This is the inflator slash air compressor that I use. It's a Ryobi. DeWalt, everybody that does battery powered stuff makes one that's similar. Make sure that it is rated for well above whatever your maximum tire pressure is. Otherwise, getting up to pressure will become incredibly difficult. I use with my Ryobi, I'm using a 3 amp hour battery. I have two of these. And let's see what yeah, see, this battery is only half full, which means it's probably not going to bring that tire. I'm probably going to run through both of my batteries trying to get tires inflated today. And oh well, and then I'll just recharge them and that'll be fine. So let me tell you what I like about this. I used to carry a Viair air compressor that I purchased, um, I think before I bought my Mercedes chassis. But once I had the Mercedes, that thing was a pain in the butt. In fact, I didn't use it. The only time I used it was when I could get somebody else to pull their vehicle up near mine, because with my Viair, and it was a great air compressor, don't get me wrong. And in fact, I've done a video shootout between that and this. Um, but the issue is people tend not to use things that are difficult to use. And in my case, the Viair was difficult to use because it needs to be attached to the vehicle battery and the vehicle needs to be running because it is so strong. It pulls a lot of current. Well, in the Mercedes, the vehicle battery was located, this is a little bit heavy for one hand, I'm gonna put it down. The vehicle battery is located under the floorboard on the driver's side, which means you got to take the vehicle apart to get to the battery. Not a big deal if you're changing the battery, but if all I want to do is put air in the tire, that's a really big deal. So I would occasionally, if I needed to, I would get somebody to pull their vehicle up within, 10 feet of mine, attached to their battery with their vehicle running so that I could air up my tires. That wasn't really working for me because I'm not, most of the time I'm not with people, so not a great option. I used to have a Ryobi inflator that was smaller than this one that I originally bought for my bicycle tires, and it was small and it was lightweight, and I would actually carry it with me when I was riding my bicycle. But I think its maximum inflation value was 50 or 60 psi, and I was riding a low pressure, low tire pressure bicycle, so not a big deal. So that one was fine for my bicycle, for my trailer tires, and for my pickup truck tires, which all only wanted to be less than 36 psi on my truck and 50 on my trailer. So I think it was a max of 75 maybe was what it was. This one, I can't remember exactly what the number is, but I think it's like 140, something like that. And my max pressure that I need is 80. So this works great. It's not fast. It's not super fast. So getting from 71 back up to 80, well, actually I'm gonna go up to about 77, I think. Um, but getting that 6 psi is a big deal. It takes a while to do it. It'll probably take about 5 to 8 minutes to just inflate that one tire. And since I have to inflate that one and the rest of them are kind of low, I will bring the rest of them up a little bit because it's not going to be that much more warmer when I leave. So I'll get them all set right, at least until I run out of battery, and then I'll be going down the road on properly inflated tires again. So why did they drop that much? Well, truthfully, the right rear was a little bit underinflated yesterday, I noticed, because again, temperature changes, drop tire pressure, and here's the downside to a TPMS that's really important to understand. With the sensors that are on the ends of the tires, they're comparatively heavy compared to the tire itself. And in fact, the TST recommends that you only use metal valve stems with the stem mounted sensors because the rubber valve stems move around too much and you can actually break them, both the sensors and the valve stems, either of which would be bad. So I saw part of the problem last year when I was in Quartzsite by having custom valve stems made for my dual rear wheels so that there are no extensions associated with them. And that means that I am less likely to have leaks as a result. But the tire pressure sensors, the monitors, sorry, the sensors that go on the ends of the valve stems for the tire pressure monitoring system also have little rubber O-rings that seal them to the valve stem, and they wear out. So when they start to wear out, you start to have more fluctuations in pressure, and you need to adjust inflation more frequently, or better yet, change the O-rings. And I do have spare O-rings, so I want to make sure, actually, I'll make sure that I have batteries because it's been over a year on this system, and I'll change the batteries and change the O-rings, and I should be good to go for another year. Now, I still have extensions on my front tires, and my intention is that when I get out to Quartzsite sometime in the next couple of months, I'm going to have custom valve stems made for my front as well, so I can get rid of the extensions on those. Not quite sure why I didn't think to do that last year, but they had not been a big problem. Turned out to be a big problem this year not that long ago, and I haven't released that video yet. So basically, the story is I was getting ready to go on a drive down to Key West, and I had a very expensive um, night planned at an RV resort on my way back up just outside of Key West. And I get ready to pull out, and my tire pressure is down to 10 on my front left. I ended up calling a mobile tire tech, and as it turns out, the problem was the valve stem extension and nothing wrong with the tire. That's the short story. So I want to get rid of those extensions as well. So the moral of this story is know what tire pressures you're supposed to be running and run them. Have an effective method to be able to measure your tire pressures and monitor them. I really recommend my TST system. And have an effective method to be able to air up your own tires. Having to go to a gas station, and I think most of the time you have to pay for air now anyway. Having to go someplace to put air in your tires is a really bad idea. It's really important to be able to do that from wherever you are. So there's my tip for the day. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking your time to watch my videos. And, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.